Arrogant daughter-in-law forces sick grandma to sleep in the garage and locks the grandson's room. Leah's arm scraped along the floor as her daughter-in-law, Deborah, yanked her hard down the hallway. She only stopped when they reached the dark garage. "Lie down right there, because this is your new room. The perfect room for someone who can't stop snooping," Deborah declared coldly, shoving Leah onto a thin mattress laid over the concrete. "Please don't do this to me." "I'm not well, I'm getting dizzy," Leah begged in a trembling voice, groping at the air for balance. "You get dizzy from all the theatrics. Stop faking it." Deborah shot back with calculated disdain, tossing a blanket over her any which way. "Mom, let go of Grandma. She can't stay in a place like this," Stephen, Leah's grandson and Deborah's son, shouted, running to prop Leah up before she tipped to the side. "Stay out of what doesn't concern you," Deborah snapped, delivering a quick slap to Stephen's face that knocked him off balance and made him step back. "You can't stop me from taking care of her," Stephen protested, palm on his cheek. "I run this house. I can do whatever I want," Deborah said, voice dry as dust. "I just want to get her medicine and a real blanket," Stephen pleaded, urgent. "Medicine only when I say so." "And a blanket only if I decide she needs one," Deborah answered, with chilly indifference, curling her fingers around the pill bottle. "Mom, you're being cruel. She's shaking," Stephen said, eyes glassy with anger. "Lesson 1. Disobedience has a price," Deborah warned, ripping Stephen's phone out of his hand in a sharp motion. "Give it back. I need to call Dad," Stephen insisted, reaching out. "Starting now, the internet is off. This conversation is over," Deborah announced with a clipped smile. "This is unfair and you know it," Stephen said, voice trembling with helpless fury as he fought back tears. "Bring it up again and your grandma won't get her medicine. Now go to your room," Deborah threatened, shoving his shoulder. She marched him down the hall to his room, ignoring his protests. She flung the door open, pushed him inside, and turned the key. "You can't lock me in here," Stephen called from the other side. "When you learn to obey, I'll let you out," Deborah concluded, her steps fading away. The hallway sank into silence, and Stephen understood that if he did nothing, Leah would sleep in the cold of the garage. Hours later, when the house was asleep, Stephen forced the window latch with the tip of a pair of scissors until it cracked open a sliver. He moved slowly, listening for every creak of the wood, slid into the yard, and slipped to the garage in silence. "Who's there?" Leah whispered, afraid, curled under a worn blanket that couldn't beat the chill. "It's me. It's okay, Grandma. I came to check on you," Stephen said softly, kneeling beside the mattress. "I can't take this cold," Leah confessed, her teeth chattering. "I'll fix the blanket and check your meds. Tell me how you're feeling," he said gently, tugging the fabric up to her shoulders. "I know why she's doing this to me," Leah said, voice shaking. "What happened? Tell me, Grandma," Stephen urged, leaning toward the thin shaft of light. "I saw Deborah kissing a man inside the house. I didn't see his face," Leah revealed. Shame and fear tangled together. Stephen froze. His heart kicked and his breath hitched for a beat. "Are you sure? Where was it?" he asked, voice unsteady. "Near the kitchen. I saw the kiss, but the man had his back to me. Couldn't see his face," Leah explained, uncertain. "So that's why she treats you like this. She's trying to shut you up," Stephen said, indignation tight in his chest. "I told her I'd seen something and she told me to shut up on the spot, then dragged me here," Leah admitted in a thread of voice. "I won't leave you alone, Grandma, I promise," Stephen said, his firmness threaded with emotion. "Don't take too many risks, my grandson. I'm afraid of what she might do to you," Leah asked, eyes damp. "Don't worry." "I'll be careful," Stephen answered, pulling the bottle into the light and counting the capsules. "Something's missing. I can feel it," Leah said urgently. "I've memorized the capsule count now," Stephen replied, putting the bottle back in exactly the same spot. "Go, before someone wakes up," Leah pleaded, still holding his wrist. In the morning, With heavy eyes, Stephen opened a notebook and began logging everything. Times, Leah's shivers, the way her breath shortened. He hid it in the closet before leaving the room, only to do the house chores Deborah forced on him. He grabbed the broom left by the door and followed the routine without raising suspicion. During one of the chores, when Deborah got distracted in the yard, he slipped Leah some tea and tucked a kitchen thermometer into his pocket. In the garage, he measured the cold of the floor, watched Leah's sweat and shortness of breath, and burned those signs into memory to later cross-check with the medication times. He hurried back, finished the orders, locked himself in his room again, and filled the notebook with the new information. "Mary, I really need to talk to you," Stephen called softly through the gate. "Okay, take a breath and tell me what's going on," Mary said, steady and calm, stepping closer. "My mom put my grandma in the garage, Mary, left her out there in the cold with not enough blankets, and she only lets me leave my room to do chores," Stephen explained, voice shaking, clutching the bars. "She locked you in your room. That's serious, Stephen," Mary said, shock-contained, eyes scanning the street. "She did. I can only get out at night when everyone's asleep, and I came here because I've got no one else to ask," Stephen said, urgent. "And why is your mom going after your grandma? What set this off?" Mary asked carefully. "My grandma told me she saw my mom kissing a man inside the house, and ever since Grandma confronted her, she's been humiliated out in the garage to keep quiet," Stephen said, anger held tight. "How exactly are you trying to help?" Mary asked, steering the talk toward a plan. "I started writing everything down in a notebook. Times, when my grandma shakes, when she can't breathe, when she sweats. I also measured the garage floor's cold with a kitchen thermometer and counted the pills," Stephen answered, focused, holding the notebook up through the gate. Mary leafed through it with careful attention, forehead furrowing line by line. "I recorded every dose she got and when she didn't. My mom is rationing the medicine and threatens me if I question it," Stephen said, biting his lip to keep control. "I get it. First, we need to organize these notes so they become evidence," Mary said, voice firm. "How do I do that?" Stephen asked, hopeful. "I'll give you an analog thermometer. It's more precise, and a symptom log. Write down the time, an objective description, the intensity, and any change after medication," Mary instructed, going inside and coming back minutes later with the device and a small planner. "I'll follow it exactly," Stephen said, resolve renewed, tucking the items into his jacket. "And we'll set up discreet check-ins. Late at night, I'll review the data and we'll adjust whatever's needed," Mary planned aloud. "Okay, I'll come back tomorrow at the same time," Stephen promised, breathing a little easier. "And no face-to-face confrontations with your mom. You have to be patient," Mary stressed, serious. "I'll hold it together. I just want to get my grandma out of that garage and prove what they're doing to her," Stephen said, voice catching. "You will. Now go carefully and update me tomorrow. I'll be waiting," Mary said in a low tone, retreating into the porch shadows. The next day, Stephen tried a different angle and knocked on the gate of Jack, the next-door neighbor for many years. "Jack, I need to use your phone to call my dad. He's been working out of town for a few months and I don't have a cell," Stephen asked humbly. "Sure, go ahead. Here, have some water, you look tired," Jack offered with a smile. "Thanks, this'll be quick," Stephen said, eyeing the phone on the small table. "What's the number? Let me pull up the international code. Those can be a pain," Jack said patiently. "I just need 2 minutes to leave a message with my dad's company office," Stephen explained, holding out a slip of paper. "Hold on, let me grab another pen," Jack said, disappearing down the hall. While Stephen waited, heart pounding, firm footsteps approached the gate. "What do you think you're doing here?" Deborah cut in at the gate, eyes narrowed like blades. "I just wanted to use the phone to call my dad and tell him about Grandma," Stephen answered, earnest and strained. "You are not going to distract your father at work with your drama, or that old woman's," Deborah decreed, clamping a hand around her son's arm. Let go! You're hurting me, Stephen said, trying to pull free without making it worse. Home! Now! Deborah ordered, dragging Stephen as Jack watched in silence, leaning on the doorway. Why did you call her? Stephen asked, frustration thin and tight. Because a son shouldn't disobey his mother, Jack said, voice hollow. Deborah hauled Stephen down the street into the house and shoved him inside without letting go of the key. Enough with the theatrics, Deborah said coldly, pulling him in and locking the door with a twist. I'm beefing up those locks so you won't get out again. Your choices brought this on, she added, satisfied and cruel. You're punishing me for trying to help Grandma, Stephen said, voice shaking with anger. I'm protecting my house from your drama, Deborah concluded. Right then, Stephen understood. Jack was part of the trap. The house was tighter than ever, but the plan wasn't dead. It just had to change shape. That same week, Stephen waited for night, and after time and struggle, managed to pry a crack in the window despite the reinforced locks. He ran to Mary's with his notes. I brought everything. I upped the measurements and logged every med delivery, Stephen said, out of breath, passing the notebook and the planner through the gate. Let me see, Mary said, reading line by line with professional focus. My mom cut down my visits, beefed up the locks, and Jack ratted me out when I tried to call my dad, Stephen reported, simmering. Your notes already add up to a strong body of evidence, Mary assessed, cross-checking entries and times. Will this really work? Stephen asked, insecurity gnawing inside. It will. I'm going to file an initial report based on your records, the clinical signs, and the assaults you described, Mary decided firmly. You'd do that for us? Stephen said, eyes stinging. I would. And to widen your options, take this old phone for calls and basic recording, Mary offered, placing the device in his hand. With this, I can call my dad's office and leave a message, Stephen said, gripping the phone. Exactly. I'll show you a spot far enough away where you can call safely without drawing attention, Mary said, describing corners, walls, and shadows. Thank you for all of this, Stephen said, voice thick. He left, clutching the phone to his chest like a promise, feeling like he'd finally found a direct line to get his grandma out of the garage. When he reached the spot Mary had shown him, Stephen took out the phone and made the call to his father's company. This is Stephen, Christopher's son. I need to leave an urgent message for him, he said, voice tight, gripping the handset. Go ahead. I'll route it straight to coordination, the receptionist said briskly. My mom forced my grandma to sleep in the garage in the cold, and she's rationing her medicine, all because Grandma saw my mom kissing another man. This is how she's keeping Grandma quiet, Stephen reported, throat tight. Understood. We'll mark this as a priority, the receptionist replied, serious. Stephen pocketed the phone and breathed like someone breaking the surface. He retraced his steps along the same path to the low yard wall, careful not to leave a trail. Who's there? Deborah demanded, suspicious, appearing in the hallway as Stephen swung himself over the wall. I just needed some air. I felt suffocated, Stephen improvised, smothering his startle. You were trying to run again, Deborah accused, shoving his shoulder so he banged against the jamb. Mom, careful, I'll fall, Stephen warned with a clenched hiss. Thanks to your escapes, tomorrow morning I'm getting your grandma out of this house, Deborah announced, venomously cold. You don't have that right. She's my father's mother, Stephen shot back, voice shaking with revolt. I'm the one who decides that. It's none of your business. Get back to your room, Deborah sentenced, pointing at the doorway like a cell. In the morning, as he stepped out for chores, Stephen saw bags in the trunk and heard metallic clanking. His anxiety flipped to high alert. So it's set, Jack? The garage renovation starts tonight, and Leah will be moved out, Deborah said at the gate, voice low and calculating. Leave it to me. I'll prep the place. No problem, Jack replied, with a smile that never reached his eyes. This is wrong. You both know it, Stephen said from the hallway, unable to stop himself from stepping in. "Go back inside. You weren't invited." Deborah cut him down with a blade-sharp stare. "I just want to know where Grandma's going," Stephen insisted, bracing himself. "To the kind of place where people who talk too much end up," Jack said, in a low, taunting voice. That night, Deborah dressed Leah in a rush, trying to hide a package while barking orders. "Be quiet and do what I say," Deborah demanded impatiently, fastening Leah's coat. "I'm dizzy. Just give me a minute," Leah said, weak and afraid. "No minute! Move!" Deborah ordered, gripping her arm with controlled force. "Wait! She's not okay," Stephen said, body taut, heart in his throat. "Stay in your place or you'll regret it," Deborah threatened. Stephen waited for his mother to leave with his grandmother, then grabbed the notebook and the hidden phone, slipped out the window, and followed them down the dark street, keeping his distance so they wouldn't notice. A few blocks later, he spotted the car stopped at Jack's shop and drew closer. "Right this way, quick," Jack directed, leading Deborah and Leah to a discreet back bay. "I don't want to go in." "I can't breathe," Leah murmured, afraid on the threshold. "Just go in. It's better for you," Deborah pushed, faux soothing, gripping Leah's elbow. Stephen watched with the phone ready. He recorded the storefront name painted on the facade and the address number, then zoomed in to capture the license plate. "You're nervous for nothing. Trust me," Jack told Deborah, complicit, before the two of them shared a quick kiss. Stephen's eyes flew open. He realized Jack was the man Leah had seen kissing Deborah. Suddenly, it all clicked. That's why Jack turned him in so fast. He'd been on Deborah's side all along. Stephen forced himself to breathe and refocus. He needed evidence. "Now I need a shot of Grandma inside," he decided, waiting for a lapse until he found a sliver of space at the door. "I don't want to sit. I'm cold," Leah said, huddled, when Jack pointed to a chair between paint cans. "Sit and be quiet." "It'll pass," Deborah lied, pushing Leah's shoulders down. "Got it. Now back to Mary," Stephen said to himself, backing away until he vanished around the corner. He hustled through the streets to Mary's house, tapped the gate the way they'd agreed, and she came out. "I've got the photos, license plate, storefront, the time, and a shot of my grandma inside the bay," Stephen said, breathless, handing over the phone. "Let me see," Mary said, clinically focused, analyzing each image and cross-checking with the notebook. "I almost yelled when I saw Jack kissing my mum," Stephen confessed, rage locked in, shock written across his face. "Jack? Are you sure?" Mary asked, startled, hand to her mouth. "I am. I saw it with my own eyes. They're together," Stephen said, voice unsteady. "Now I understand why he turned you in so quickly that day," Mary said, indignation rising. "Exactly. He was never on my side, always against me," Stephen said, bitter. Across town, Christopher, Stephen's father, felt his phone buzz with a priority message and picked up immediately. On the other end, the office relayed his son's report in detail. With every word, Christopher's chest got heavier and his breath sharpened. He couldn't hold back the outrage. He decided he had to come back as fast as possible to confront and understand what was going on. A few days later, the doorbell rang hard. Deborah rushed to answer and froze to see Christopher standing there, face taut, breath heavy. "You're back already, Christopher?" Deborah asked, tense, hand clamped on the knob. "I came back because I got a message from my son saying my mother is being mistreated and that you're cheating on me," Christopher said, voice controlled but hard, eyes locked. "He makes up stories so he can disobey me," Deborah snapped, trying to sound in charge. "Then I want to see my mother now," Christopher demanded, stepping in. "She's not here," Deborah blurted, giving away more than she meant to. "Where is she?" Christopher asked, anger rising. "She went out for a walk," Deborah deflected, eyes sliding away. "Dad, she took Grandma to Jack's shop. I have the address," Stephen said, appearing from the hallway with the phone in his hands. "You sure?" Christopher asked, urgent. "I am. I followed them and recorded everything," Stephen said, showing the storefront, the address number, and the plate. Then we're going now, Christopher decided, turning away without asking permission. You're not going anywhere, Deborah cut in, trying to block the exit. I'm getting my mother back, with or without you, Christopher shot back, opening the gate. The street felt short on the way to the shop. The metal door rattled when Christopher pounded on it. Easy? Who is it? Why the hurry? Jack asked from inside, dragging back the bolt. Open up, I want to see my mother, Christopher ordered, voice heavy. No one from your family is in here, Jack lied, leaving only a finger-width gap. I've got photos of you two bringing her in, Stephen said, raising the phone toward the crack. Close that door, Jack, and don't say a word, Deborah whispered, breathless as she caught up. If you don't open it, I'm calling the police, Christopher warned, already pulling out his phone. I'll open. Calm down, Jack conceded, pale, letting the chain fall. Out of the way, Christopher demanded, pushing the rolling door wider. There's nothing here for you, Deborah tried, stepping in front of him. Dad, the light's coming from that room, Stephen pointed, indicating an improvised divider. Don't touch that door, Deborah shouted, her voice breaking. I'll touch whatever I have to in order to get my mother out of here, Christopher answered, wrenching the knob until it popped. Cold air spilled from the little room, and Leah appeared, shrunken, wrapped in a thin throw, perched on a chair rigged up like a bed. Son, Leah murmured in weary relief, reaching out a trembling hand. I'm here, Mom, Christopher said, voice breaking as he knelt to hug her and pulled his coat around her. I feel so cold, Leah confessed, breathing shallowly. The cold's over now, Mom. I'm getting you out of here, Christopher said, adjusting the blanket. It was just for a few days, because of some work at the house, Deborah tried, a thread of mockery creeping back. Work means hiding an elderly woman in a freezing bay? Christopher asked with scorn, eyes drilling into Jack. I just lent them the space, Jack said, voice shriveled. You didn't just lend space. I already know that you're the one my wife is. Dad, let's leave that for now. I'm calling Mary so she can notify the authorities, Stephen said, already unlocking his phone. This is a family matter. We don't need anyone else, Deborah insisted, trying to edge closer. Family doesn't include stashing a sick elderly woman in a mechanic's shop, Christopher shot back, shielding them both. Stephen alerted Mary, and minutes later sirens rolled up quietly. Blue light washed over the storefront. Who authorized you? Deborah challenged, trying to puff herself up. The confirmed risk on site and the records that were sent, the officer replied, firm. We're taking the elderly woman to a safe place, the officer said, signaling her team. I'm going with her. I know the way, and she needs support, Stephen said, ready. The ride back was short and silent. When they reached the house, the team cleared a path to Leah's old room. How are you feeling now, Grandma? Stephen asked, anxious but gentle, fixing her pillow and blanket. Better. I want to stay here, close to you, Leah answered with a tired, honest smile, squeezing Christopher's hand. You will, Mom. I won't let anyone hurt you again, Christopher said, hands on her shoulders. In the days that followed, Deborah and Jack didn't escape what they'd done. With the photos, the notebook and the statement Stephen sent, and Mary organized, the makeshift bay was shut down. Both received formal notices. Deborah was removed from the home under a temporary order, barred from approaching Leah or Stephen, required to undergo monitoring, and ordered to answer for abuse and neglect. Jack was charged as an accomplice. His shop was temporarily closed for inspection. He had to sign a responsibility agreement and pay a heavy fine. The fear they used to control people evaporated. Deborah left with a small suitcase and a bitter face no one feared anymore. Jack pulled down the shop doors, took the sign off, and looked away when they crossed paths on the street. The garage went back to being just an empty space, and the silence that once served cruelty became a reminder of a line they would never be allowed to cross again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.